Welcome to Fast Politics, Ali Vitali.
So happy to be back.
Yes, we will make our haters waiters at the table of success.
As they should
To
be.
quote our mayor who is on his way out, Eric Adams.
Yeah.
And that is all we will talk about New York City politics because nobody cares. That was always our rule, was that nobody cared. Now I actually think people care a little bit, but
I deeply care. Way
yes.
Too Early loves a mayoral segment.
Yes. Well, all right. I want to talk first about your interview with Mike Johnson because Republican electeds tend not to go on MSNBC with very few exceptions. Democrats tend not to go on Fox, though sometimes they do, and it makes Trump really mad. I'm thinking about Mark Kelly when he went on Fox and Trump
Pete
just completely
Buttigieg.
flipped out. Yeah. But so talk us through how you got Mike Johnson on.
Well, first of all, I'm someone who thinks that we should be talking to people everywhere. And so
Well,
I
and
love
also
it.
he's the leader of the House. I mean,
Exactly. I
it's
mean, look,
very relevant.
I know that I've been at NBC for a long time. Now we are MSNBC. I've been
We're
in all of
MS
these
now.
circles concurrently at once, right?
MS
Um,
now, baby.
MS now in like a
MS
month.
now. Yeah. Oh, it's not yet? Okay.
Not it's like the impending MS now, and
Okay.
that's Ms. now, as I've been telling
Yes.
people.
Ms. now,
Kinda, like,
baby.
reminds me of the green M&M, like,
Yeah.
sassy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so here's what I think. Republicans run Washington right now. That means that we need to be talking to Republicans. I've always been someone who talks to Republicans. You need to know what's going on all sides to
You're gonna
understand
cover Congress.
it's what's going
Yeah.
on and to cover Congress, right? So I was actually so thrilled that the speaker said yes to doing this interview and that we were able to do it together because I've covered him for so long. And I think what it says to me is that if we didn't think that this was going to be a long shutdown before, which I think most of us understood that this was going to stretch on, the fact that he wanted to broaden his audience to me said that that was acknowledging how long we were going to be in this and that
Mm.
Republicans at least were thinking about the fact that they needed to try to message to new audiences against the backdrop of polling that I asked him about that showed that at that point, a few days into the shutdown, the Washington Post had a poll that showed 47% of Americans were blaming Republicans and Trump more than they were blaming Democrats. They were only getting 30% of Americans blaming them. It's still
And
substantial, but
right.
notable as they're trying to figure out like who wins a shutdown, which no one actually
Nobody
wins.
wins.
Someone just like
Yeah.
loses slightly less. But I thought that it was notable and important. And it sort of leaves us where we are right now, which is technically on day 10, but really ensuring that we're going to be at least a 14-day shutdown because the
Right.
Senate went home Thursday night and they're not coming back until Tuesday.
Mike Johnson, so one of the things he did, which is super interesting, is he sent everyone home before the shutdown. And that was to make sure that they couldn't do a revised CR. That was to say, it's in the Senate. The CR we passed is the CR that will be the CR if you're going to pass it. Otherwise, you shut down the government. Is that smart?
I think it's smart until you get to this point, right?
Right.
It's smart if you're in this posture for a week and you're just trying to apply leverage. And especially leading up to that shutdown deadline,
Right.
it was smart to send the House home because the Senate then felt, okay, well, if we don't pass this, then we're going into a shutdown. But
Right.
Democrats at that point in the Senate had already baked into their calculus that they were prepared to shut the government down because they thought they had found the right issue to fight on. That's also why we're still in this because both
Right.
sides is seeing that their bases are happy with the way that they're conducting themselves right now. I think the interesting thing that's happening on the House Republican side and why Johnson's position of keeping the House out is now becoming a little problematic for him.
Right.
Two reasons. The first is members are feeling like it looks bad for them to be kept out of Washington at a time that there's a crisis. That's
Yes.
real. It's something
And that
Johnson
is
wrote about on a conference call this week. Like members are like, I don't know, we should come back. There's other stuff we could be working on. Maybe it's not
right.
just the shutdown.
Right.
The second piece of it too is that in the background of this is the Epstein discharge petition. And the fact that Johnson is now saying, well, we're out of session, so I can't swear in this congresswoman-elect from Arizona. Her name's Adelita Grijalva. The thing is, you can be in a pro forma session and swear in
And
a new
in
member.
fact, he swore in two Republican members during a pro forma session recently.
Exactly
Yeah,
right. And his explanation for that was like, well, their families were here and initially we were supposed to be in session that day. But like, if you look at the House planning calendar,
yeah,
like they've also been supposed to be in session now. And the
right,
speaker can change that and he has, but like, there's nothing that actually prohibits him from swearing her in. And
right.
so that pressure is mounting in the background as well.
I want to talk about this discharge petition because it's like it looks really bad for Republicans. So just explain to us how a discharge petition becomes in anything because this is going to die in the Senate.
It's gonna die in the Senate, but it still forces the issue and potentially forces the vote in the House.
Right.
And that puts Republicans in a really sticky position of having to decide, okay, are we gonna vote for transparency on an issue that we have said there should be transparency on all along? Or are we gonna or are we gonna stay in line with the White House and not vote for transparency on this? Because the president no longer wants to see all of the files released for whatever reason he's
Right.
had this change of
Yes.
heart,
It's a
right?
mystery.
And
Yes.
for folks who are like not nerds about congressional procedure, a discharge petition is something that members have to do in bipartisan fashion, or they can do it in partisan fashion, but the numbers are so slim in the margins that you need members of both parties to sign on to stuff like this. It's basically a way to make an end run around leadership. If you've got something you want to vote on, but leadership doesn't want to bring it to the floor, you have to get to 218 votes and then pack a lot of patience because there's a lot of time that's baked into waiting in this process.
Right.
And eventually you can force a vote on the thing that leadership doesn't want on the floor. And that's probably what's going to happen at some point in the next few weeks. And like for people who are like, okay, well, what happens when Adelie Turgalva is the 218th signature? It's like she hits 218. I think they have to wait 7 legislative days, 5 or 7
Right.
legislative days. And then once someone comes to the floor and says, okay, I'm ready to like press go on the discharge petition, leadership then only has 2 days to figure out what they're going to do with it. So, like, by
Right.
bringing the House back, Johnson would start the clock. And that's also
Right.
problematic.
This is so bad and also so stupid. Now we need to talk about Wolf Blitzer's favorite congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And this is not a criticism of Wolf because I love
Yeah,
Wolf. Name a more iconic
truly.
icon than Wolf Blitzer. What is happening? I think it's important to remember that no one in Washington, D.C. ever does anything that is like because I'm a good person.
Yeah.
So let's game this out. There's a theory of the case that is she wanted to run for Senate in Georgia.
Yep.
Trump told her no.
The polling was bad.
God knows why. I mean, still, like she was very MAGA. After that happened, she decided that perhaps now some of Trump's incredibly terrible policies are not her policies. And now she's like trying to represent her constituents, perhaps.
I actually think this is the most MAGA thing that any MAGA has ever.
Yes.
Let me explain.
Tell us why.
So Trump is notoriously not a partisan. Like Trump
Right.
just wants what he wants based on what's politically expedient or personally expedient to him.
Yes.
And
Or
so,
makes him money.
or makes him money. I would
Yeah.
argue that's in the personal expediency
Yes.
category.
Yes.
But
Correct.
so he's not someone who has ever been a conservative ideologue or a
Right.
neocon or a this or like you can't
Or
actually
anything.
box him in. And so
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out and reading the political tea leaves on this and saying, "Oh yeah, okay, almost 8 in 10 Americans wants us to do something on the ACA and oh by the way, my kid is telling me that this is going to cost him too much money." It's actually like so MAGA to say I'm an
Right.
outsider to the party of outsiders
Right.
and I don't have one political ideological box that I have to fit in. So I'm going to say, yeah, this makes sense. And I think it's also a smart way if you layer the statewide aspirations lens over it to say, how do I break myself out of this MAGA box that in Georgia, especially, has shown it has a ceiling to how much support I'm ever going
Right.
to get? Do I
Right.
think that that will work? I don't know. How short a memory do voters have, and how willing are
Right.
they to let politicians evolve? Typically, not very,
Right.
but stranger things have happened, like Marjorie Taylor Greene becoming Wolf Glitzer's favorite congressperson.
Congresswoman. It is so interesting because, like, I think part of what this moment is people feel so. I mean, maybe you don't, but like a lot of people who do in this business feel so terrible. We've just seen so much cowardice out of politicians, so much craven opportunism that when anything seems like it might not be that, it's kind of incredible.
I think that's right. And I also think that that fits well into us going into weeks 2 and 3 of this shutdown, because I think both parties right now are pretty insulated by the DC thinking of, well, I'm winning on this, or I
Right.
can win on this, or I can force the issue here. And I think that that C-SPAN moment with Mike Johnson having the woman call and say, "I'm a Republican. My husband is active duty. My kids have medical needs that aren't going to get met if my husband doesn't get his paycheck on October 15th." And she said, "I'm embarrassed of my party, but I also think that there are Democrats who are feeling the pain. When I talk to Democratic
Right.
lawmakers, they hear from them all the time. And I think
Right.
those people don't actually, can I swear on this podcast?
Oh,
People actually
yes.
don't give a fuck about if
Right.
Democrats are winning or if
Right.
Republicans
Right.
are
Right.
winning. They would just like to be able to get their health care,
Right.
get their veterans benefits, get the appointments that they need, have their constituent services done. Like, that's the shit that they care about. And they don't care that, like, Mike Johnson is blaming Democrats or that
Right.
Schumer says that this is good for us, which was not the best line and has given Republicans a whole new round of fire.
I think like the fundamental truth of like you are a public servant to serve the public is something we've gotten really far removed from.
At the same time, again, I understand because source upon source upon source has explained to me from the Democratic point of view that they recognize that there is an infliction of pain right now, but
Yeah.
they also feel that so much pain has already been inflicted when they did
Yeah.
things the quote unquote traditional way,
Yeah.
and that they're past that point and they have to try something else.
They could not have not done this. Like if those guys wanted to keep their leadership jobs, like I talk to Democrats all the time. It was over. Like there was no like they were done. Like
But
they
again, that's
were in
the
an
self-serving
impossible
piece of it,
situation.
right? Where it's like, yes, the larger issue of healthcare is so imperative and important for people, voters, not
Right.
people here who work in Congress. And at the same time, there's also that background knowledge that like leadership positions hinge on reading this situation correctly.
I want to talk about like the authoritarian pushback, the pushback to authoritarianism, because like while this administration is super incompetent and like that will probably be the thing that keeps American democracy going, it is also doing things that are shocking. Like what's happening in Chicago is what I'm thinking
So
of.
I disagree with you on their incompetence. I found I'll tell you why, because I covered the whole first Trump term. I was a White House reporter for the first 2 years for NBC,
Mhm.
and it felt at that time that there were a lot of people in government who didn't really understand how government worked. They didn't
Right.
understand where the levers of power were, how to pull them, what order to do it in. I feel that in this second term of the Trump administration, they know how to exercise those levers of power now, and they are
Right.
actually doing so, and they're doing so without being encumbered by the traditional norms of Washington. They are unafraid of
Right.
doing things that cause people to clutch their pearls or
Right. No, they don't
question
give a
things.
fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Or are illegal. More importantly, things that are illegal. Right? Like
Willing to test it all in court, willing to
right.
just try what troop combination can I try between Illinois and Texas. Okay, the Texas ones
Right.
can go, but the Illinois ones get held up. All right, that's still 200 Texas troops. That's still troops on the ground. We got it there, right?
Right.
Like they're willing to test that. I do think that they run the risk of being too brazen when it comes to saying um, federal workers who are furloughed will not get their back pay.
I mean
They
that
passed the
by
law
the
in
way,
2019 to close the loophole and ensure that they could.
yes. Yes, it's not popular, it's not legal, and it's not happening. So that was like
Well,
such
it
an
might.
I mean, they're gonna win in court. But the other thing with Trumpism, I still think they're incompetent, but I see what you're saying, and they're definitely more competent than they ever were. But the other thing that I think is really important is that this crew is so overplaying its hand. Like they're behaving like we're in, Turkey, that they're Erdogan when it's like last year we had a normal government. And I think that that shock is probably ultimately also what saves us. But
Yeah.
like, the stuff that they're doing, like you see, the polling is terrible on this.
And we'll see. right? Like,
Right.
they have always had consistent issues that worked for Trump, and it was
Right.
always immigration. Like, I remember every time he would
Immigration,
get into, like, a
economy.
pre-election period where he didn't know if he was winning, it would be coverage of a caravan on Fox
Right.
or over-indexing again on crime, and so the fact that
God,
they are
that
going all in on
caravan.
that
Remember how yeah,
every
sorry, go
time
on.
a caravan,
That
right?
caravan.
And
Like, it
so,
was
like
like, where'd they find those guys? Are they bringing them? Yeah, go on.
right, but,
Yeah.
like, that was the thing. So it makes sense why they would lead with the things that have always worked for them, right? And
Yeah.
so now there's a question of, are they over-indexing on that? And I think
Right.
in my anecdotal conversations with Trump supporters, people who have voted for him 3 times, they have said to me kind of questioning, "Well, I thought the immigration enforcement was gonna be like violent people or
Right.
criminals, not like
Right.
a person who I've known who works at the diner 2 blocks down from my house and has been here for 20 years." Like, there is some reluctance about that, and I don't know if that's gonna be enough ultimately
Right.
to see some kind of massive overhaul in the midterms. That's,
Right.
like, the first place that we look for, like, an actual national, like, litmus test, but it's certainly an operating theory, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you over-indexing on people wanting less government bloat, and by doing Doge and then kind of, like, doing Doge on top of Doge during a shutdown, like, are you
Right.
over-indexing on that? We don't know the answer yet.
Right. I mean, I do think, like, you do see Joe Rogan being like, "This is not fucking cool." The reason that Joe Rogan can do that and Republicans can't is because Joe Rogan has a constituency and
Yeah.
Republicans don't.
Yeah, and to the extent that it aligned in 2024, it aligned. But, in the same way that the Barstool guys, Dave Portnoy and Rogan, like, they are not people whose entry point is politics, and their audience's entry point is not politics. It was a confluence that was really loose. And so I think
Right.
the Trump coalition of 2024, it might have been just a for now coalition in the same way, frankly, that the Biden 2020 coalition was just a for now coalition. And so you're
But
testing that always in real time.
yes. But I do think the big difference between Biden and Trump is that Trump got in front of those people and
Right.
Biden did not. So even like that coalition, I think in some ways, like those people were more likely Biden people because they actually found him versus the Trump people where he found them and was like sneakers, Bitcoin, NFTs, I'm offering you
But
stuff.
also 2020 was I've always looked at it as, people voting based on COVID response.
Right.
Objectively speaking, the Trump administration's response was bureaucratic mismanagement,
Right.
at least for the first several months, right? And so, we could talk about that at length at a different
Yeah.
point. But I think, if I think about the last few weeks here in Washington, it seems like nothing has changed, but I actually think there's one big thing that has changed. And it dawned on me as I was doing my interview with the speaker. It's that Democrats, by holding their votes right now, have managed to make this a conversation that's no longer about if ACA subsidies or healthcare generally should be up for negotiation. Now it's a debate over when are they going to do that, right? And
Right.
that debate still needs to be solved because that's the only way the government gets open again. But
But they've
that is an
won.
incremental win and a shifting of
Yeah.
the Overton window in Congress, where Mike Johnson 2 weeks ago was not saying, we 100% are going to have to do a negotiation on the ACA. Thune was not
Right.
saying that. They were like open, but they were not committal. And now
Right.
they've put themselves in a position where they've had to be committal, at least to sitting at the negotiating table.
Right.
And I think we shouldn't sleep on the fact that that is a dynamic that has changed in Washington. And it's why Democrats are feeling like they need to continue to hold this posture until there's some firm agreement on what that negotiation looks like and when.
Right. So will you see a way out of the shutdown?
I see a way out. I
But
just don't see
especially
anyone
because
walking towards
Trump
it.
wants those ACA subsidies too,
Well, and
because
that
he's
I mean, I asked Johnson that. I said, if Trump decides in his constant quest for a deal that he wants to do an ACA deal, are you going to work against him? And he was like, well, no, but we can't do it until the government is open. And I don't
right.
know. It really depends on Trump's threshold for pain
Yeah.
and if he decides that the party is losing. Because again, like, people can say what they will about him, but he's always been one of the more adept members of his party at putting his finger in the wind and saying, which way is it blowing and am I winning?
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ali Vitale.
Love you.
Also,
Always a pleasure.
love you.